Okay, I think we're in a good place to go ahead and get started. Well, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning or good evening, depending on the time zone from which you're calling in our virtual world these days. I'm Dr. Christine Kelly, the Associate Director of the PHutures Career Hub at Johns Hopkins University. And I'm really excited about the conversation we have planned today on careers in publishing. This session marks the launch of a new event series organized by PHutures, Discovering the Humanities Through the Professions, aimed at introducing participants with advanced training in humanities and humanistic social science fields to a wide range of pathways into highly compelling, impactful professional careers, alongside strategies to leverage their degrees into these careers and thrive in their associated workplace environments. As details around the spring series are finalized, please do look out for more information via email. And for those who are not Hopkins affiliated, by following PHutures on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram for more information. It's a real pleasure to be joined today by participants at Johns Hopkins and from universities far and wide. And please also allow me to express my special gratitude to our guest speaker, Stephen Garlington, a campus recruiter at Penguin Random House, for taking time from his busy schedule to join us today. Before we begin, please allow me to say a few words introducing Stephen. Stephen Garlington joined Penguin Random House in 2020 as their first ever dedicated campus recruiter tasked with designing the company's entry-level recruiting strategy. Prior to joining Penguin Random House, Stephen managed internship programs serving diversity in media and entertainment, consulting, and the health professions. At the core of his professional philosophy, he believes that exposure is the gateway to living a choice-filled life and holds that guiding principle in his approach to recruiting. He holds a bachelor's degree from Coppin State University and a master's degree from the University of Pennsylvania. Today, Stephen will be sharing information about career pathways at Penguin, which will inform participants on roles at this particular publishing company, while also serving as a vehicle for information sharing about the world of publishing more broadly, including the day-to-day responsibilities that accompany publishing roles and strategies to consider when pursuing a publishing career. We're really looking forward to learning more from Stephen about careers in publishing, and following his remarks, we'll set aside some time for Q&A, but please do feel free to enter any thoughts or questions as they're occurring to you in the chat area at any time. So with that, Stephen, I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to you. Thank you so much. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. I have to look at the time. Sometimes people are in different time zones, but thank you so much for that introduction. I'm really pleased to be here to speak with all of the students, graduates, recent grads, future to be grads, just on the whole world that is publishing at Penguin Random House. And so my approach to these conversations, kind of somewhat of an info session, but I love to just this is just a conversation. It's a chance for us to just dialogue and learn a little bit about whatever, learn not only about like our company and the publishing process, but how you and individually can find yourself within a position here. Also, if publishing is not a particular industry that you've ever likely considered, awesome. More than happy to kind of have conversations around how maybe your interests, ancillary skill sets may apply to some of the positions that we have available. So, anywhere along the conversation, feel free to drop a question in the chat, or I don't know if there's a hand raise function, but we can chat any way through there. I'm going to start off with just doing a brief presentation, just to give a little bit of more a window into like what it is that we do and opportunities available within the publishing process, and then just kind of open it up for dialogue, Q&A, and can kind of go from there. So bear with me. I have to click off of a lot of buttons. Okay, share. Okay, can you see this, Christine? Okay, awesome.
That looks good. Thank you.
Oh, can you also see this thing with the people with you all's pictures? Okay, that would make sense. Okay, let's do that. All right, awesome. So a little bit about Penguin Random House. Oh, let me take a step back. Sometimes, so Penguin Random House, if you're not that aware, is a publishing house. And by that, one of the misconceptions about what publishing houses do is we publish books, meaning we in essence hire authors to we may acquire their works, or they may come in and work with some of our editorial teams to bring books to market. What we don't do is necessarily hire writers. We more help writers find an audience for their books. And so part of that is we publish 70,000 digital and 15,000 annual prints per year. And by publish, I really mean bring to market. Penguin Random House is a huge company that's made up of 300 different editorial imprints. And so the way I like to explain imprints are kind of like individual brands, right? So Coca-Cola may be the company, but Sprite is a brand. That's Pepsi, but Diet Coke might be a brand. So we have 300 different editorial brands that cover everything from lifestyle, fiction, nonfiction, religious oriented publications, fashion, you name it. And then, like I said, we really fiercely protect our authors' intellectual property and really just champion them to have freedom of expression. And like I said in the beginning, we really just help authors realize their best work and find innovative ways to bring their stories to audiences and readers around the world. Who we are is we're the largest general interest publisher in the world, and that's by a pretty wide margin. The way publishing houses are ranked very similar to like consulting or big tech is there's like the big five. Of the big five in publishing, we are the largest. And we united with, so you have Penguin and then you had Random House that united to actually become the global trade book company that we are. And right now we are headquartered in New York City. We have an office two offices in California, one in Denver, and a small one in Indianapolis. But we are a global company and have satellite offices pretty much anywhere in major cities around the world. And what I wanted to do is to kind of concentrate our conversation is just kind of walk you through what we call the publishing process. So it starts with editorial all the way through to sales, and just kind of give you an overview of what opportunities look like in those respective areas and what's involved in each of those steps. So let's see. Okay, if I can move this out of the way. So in the publishing process, the very first step is what we call editorial, right? And under editorial, you'll find positions like an editorial assistant, assistant editor, etc. And what editors do is they work with authors and agents to find and develop new projects. So in editorial, you'll have an author or an author's agent submit a manuscript or rough draft of a book that they'd like to be published. Our company will either acquire the rights to that book and or acquire, well, we will acquire the rights to the book and then work with the author to go from manuscript, which is a rough draft, to final draft, which is what you'd find in the store. So part of that is reading and evaluating book proposals and manuscripts, a lot of editing, and by that you'll edit for composition, you'll edit for syntax, you'll edit and proofread for cohesion, character and story development. So if you're the kind of person, as to the bottom right hand, if you find yourself kind of reimagining the endings when you read a book, you look at a movie, you go, oh, it would have been nice if it ended like this, or if they would have, changed the scene to look like that. If that's kind of the creative process or creative approach you take to your content and media, editorial is the space where that happens for books, where we get to reimagine the process and get to reimagine each chapter of the book. Okay, so once we go through editorial, we've made multiple different revisions of the book. The book will go to contracts. So our contracts department really negotiates the compensation and agreements between the company and the author or illustrators, right? Very financial based, and typically an entry-level position, and that is a contracts assistant or contracts associate. Once we have the book, we have all the kind of nuts and bolts in terms of finances worked out. The book will go to managing editorial. So managing editorial is after the title is acquired, we have a managing editor that supervises the project. So managing editors in publishing are really project management focused. They are tasked with making sure that the schedule and the workflow stays on task. So if we acquire a book in January and we want to see it come to market in November, the managing editor is going to create a timeline and kind of make sure they're checking in with authors, checking in with editors, making sure that we are able to meet those deadlines. And so if you're the kind of person that's very highly organized, really great at time management, love to kind of manage projects from beginning to end, this could really be an opportunity that fits you very well. And entry-level positions in this function of our business typically starts as an assistant managing editor or an associate managing editor. Once we kind of have everything situated there, the book will go to design. So this is where if you have a picture book, you'll have picture book designers that kind of work with illustrators or designers to kind of come up with what is the best way that we could represent this book in the market? How are we going to get people excited when they look at this book cover to purchase? So book designers have to read the book and get a sense of what is the feel, the color, the texture. Should it be graphic? Should it be illustrated? Should it be cartoons? Should it be blue, green? They have to take all of these different things into consideration to create a very a visual appeal that will entice a person to buy, right? So if you're the person who's very much creative, very much, the doodler, work really well with Illustrator, InDesign, those types of programs, and love to collaborate, this might be a great opportunity for you. And entry-level positions typically start off as a book design assistant or junior designer. Once you kind of have and this is an example of kind of what that would look like. So you might come in and create a what they call like I won't get into it, but this just kind of highlights the process of how we go from figuring out the typography, figuring out the actual font to create a stamp to how it ends up on the final book. Then once we also have production. So production actually oversees the physical creation of the book. So our production facility is located in Maryland, right outside Westminster, in Westminster, Maryland. So this is the person who will route the jacket. The jacket is the thing that covers the book. So they ensure that the books are printed, that they're delivered. So this is very much somebody who's very detail oriented and interested in logistics. This is a very logistic heavy or focused position. And so entry level positions in production assistant, assistant production supervisor. And again, these are the folks that are negotiating and making sure that the books go to the printer on time, they're produced on time, they're boxed and shipped out on time. Again, very project management focused. We also have marketing design. So marketing design produces eye-catching materials that promote books. So anytime you see billboards, you see not so much commercials, but things that you would engage with. If you walk into a Barnes and Nobles and you see a big cutout or promotional items and things that we might send out in advance to kind of promote the book. The people who design those things are called marketing designers. So if you're really interested in social media, if you manage, if you know how to capture content in a way that it would drive a person to want to engage with that content, which is very useful in social media management, this could be a position that would be very useful and interesting to you. So for example, there was a book that we had, and our team created all these different like tote bags and printouts that we might put at a library or anywhere that children may come into contact with this book. Of course, we have sales because sales drive profit, and that's what we are producing the books for. So if you got a knack for numbers, you love the idea of kind of using data and understanding how we can use data to drive sales. A sales department interacts directly with booksellers every day. So not only do we sell at retailers like Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, of course, the local kind of community bookstores, but a sales department kind of look at the data, look at the market, try to get a sense of how people would engage with the book, and they'll reach out to retailers to kind of negotiate how many books that they feel like they would want to buy, and it's a lot of process. But again, sales entry-level roles typically are sales assistant, sales coordinator. We also have retail marketing. So if you're the person who's really interested in like marketing, coming up with witty slogans, if you've ever been the person in your friend group that I have a great recommendation for you, you will love this book because, right? That value proposition is something that we really look for when we hire retail marketers. So again, these are folks that are coming up with campaigns and figuring out what is the best way to position this book in the market. What's going to really solicit and build buzz and get people to be interested in reading this? Where's the best place for us to put this material or content? Should we be putting advertisements at festivals? Should we be putting it on TV? Should we be putting it in magazines? Should it go on social media? The people who design that strategy are all our retail marketers, and they start off as marketing assistants, marketing coordinators. And so for an example, they actually came up with this idea. It was a book called Once and for All. I think it was, yeah, it was based on it was a book for wedding planners. And so they kind of created this whole kind of, will you be my reader? And created these boxes and sent them out to all kind of influencers and things in the market. So that's some of the things that they come up with the idea, and then the marketing designers actually facilitate it. We have school and library marketing, very similar to retail marketing, but with an emphasis on school and library literature. So not much of a variance there. I'm going to skip a little bit. So we have publicity, of course. So publicists promote books that they're to the authors and media. So for example, there's a big difference or subtle difference between publicity and marketing. Publicity for us is about the buzz, generating the buzz, getting people excited, and typically uses the talent or the author, right? So when you watch an author on Good Morning America or your favorite late night television show, that's publicity. Marketing is very much more the strategy that goes behind where to place the content, and publicity is about amplifying and creating buzz and creating excitement around that. So if you ever wanted to work in media and kind of work with talent and kind of in that space, this could be a great, and help kind of build authors' brands, this could be a great start for you. And our entry-level positions typically are publicity assistant or an associate publicist. Almost close to last, we have subsidiary rights. So subsidiary rights is anytime that our books, for example, get adapted into a movie. So if you think Orange is the New Black, I think it's on Netflix. Handmaid's Tale is on Netflix. 50 Shades of Grey was a really big movie. These are books of ours that subsidiary rights work to iron out with people who want to adapt books into other forms of content outside of print. So our subsidiary right office works with business managers, lawyers, media houses, television studios, et cetera, to kind of work out how to best license our content into other forms of media. And then just almost there, we have audio. So of course, the way that readers are consuming content is changing or has already changed from print to audiobooks, podcasts, what have you. So anytime that we adapt books into an audio format, we have a studio in New York and also a studio out in California and other places, but they're the people who work to kind of adapt that. So can answer more about that in the Q&A. Digital, so we have digital ops. So again, anyone who is very tech savvy or kind of want to find a way to leverage their interest in tech, engineering, coding, what have you. These are the people, this is the team, a digital ops team that works to format books to where we can engage with them through apps, or they may build an app to accompany a book, or if it's a children's book that has a game attached to it, our digital operations team would oversee kind of building that out and monitoring that to make sure that it works across varieties of platforms. And so, for example, you'll see something like Mad Libs or Dothraki. I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan, so we created an app where you can learn how to actually speak that language, etc. So things of that nature is what our digital team does. Operations is more project management, inventory, does a lot of reporting and coordination. And I'm gonna hit pause because that's a lot. That's a mouthful. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and do my best to make sense of everything that I just shared, because it's a lot. And when I first started working in publishing, I really had no clue that there was this many, and there's more steps to it than this, but I just felt like, I don't know, you sell books, right? So I had no clue just how deep kind of the different facets of the publishing process go. But neither here nor there, I'm here for any and all questions you have. And we can just go from there. So Christine, would it be best maybe just ask folks to drop the questions in the chat, or?
Yeah. So I think this is a great opportunity, like Stefan was saying earlier, for us to just have kind of a free-flowing dialogue around this, led by the questions of our participants. So do feel free, as you're comfortable, to enter your questions into the chat, or you can actually go ahead and sort of unmute yourself. If you want to turn your webcam on, you can do that. Keep it off, that's fine too. If it helps to use the raise hand feature, we can actually sort of see you and call on you. So do feel free to engage as you feel comfortable.
Awesome, absolutely. And no question is off limits. I am the most transparent person that you'll probably meet as it relates to this type of stuff. So let's go. Okay. So I see so the meeting be recorded. It is being recorded. And I think if you need access to it, Christine can probably help you get that. What's the turnover rate for entry-level jobs? What's considered entry-level for someone who holds a terminal degree? Is publishing a family-friendly? Okay, so that's a couple things. So turnover rate, that varies greatly by division, not by division, by function. So editorial, design, sales, etc., all have different turnover rates. I would say we retain the majority of our talent. When it comes to diverse talent, we do a fairly good job of holding on to, and by diverse, I mean, whether it's by gender, ethnicity, et cetera, veteran status, what have you. We do a better job than most in the industry of retaining that talent. I think it has a lot to do with the culture of trying to create what we call psychological safety, which means how can you show up and just be your authentic self and not need to have some sort of explanation for how you present. What's considered entry level for someone who has a terminal degree? Interestingly enough, so our company does not require degrees. No degree is required. So, but the other question would be, well, say I have an advanced degree or a bachelor's in editorial or a PhD, and will it lend to having like any additional value? And that all depends. What it depends on is, as a company, we look less at your educational background and a lot more of what you've done to maybe leverage that experience or leverage that knowledge to gain experience, right? So it doesn't hurt, right? There's a value to having an understanding of different literary things, if your PhD is in the humanities or in English or what have you. There's a value, there's a perceived, for us, a perceived assumption that we can make that you maybe have some foundational awareness of things, but we're going to pay a lot more attention to how you've applied that and where you've applied that. It doesn't have to be a formal like publishing thing, but just like however you've done that. And is it family friendly? I think our company is extremely family. I don't have a family, right? In terms of like, it's just me, but for everybody that I know that has one, like we're super accommodating to like anything that you may need. We have pretty progressive benefits for families, maternity leave and paternity leave, 12 weeks. If you need to take off, take your kid or your little sister or mom or whoever to a doctor's appointment, just log off, go kind of just do what you need to do. A permanent work positions, yeah, actually, I'm gonna make up a number like 90% of all of our positions that we're hiring for are open to remote. I don't see us going back to kind of this 5-day work week. It's something as a company that our employees aren't interested in, with the exception of things where maybe you're in production or you have to physically kind of have access to a particular lab, or you're in publicity and you may need to actually accompany, authors or something on a tour. Like there may be some, but in terms of like, are there open permanent remote work options? Absolutely. What experience is needed for an entry-level job? I'm particularly interested in editorial. So editorial and no, yeah, editorial. Editorial is by far the most competitive function of our business because it's also the most publicized and notable part of what people see when they hear publishing. I wouldn't say that there's a necessary level of experience. What I'd say is that it's how you, I've seen candidates with 5 years experience and some with 0. And sometimes it's just about how you position your skill sets on your resume and in your cover letter that is going to speak above and beyond. And my advice would be, we're not focused on necessarily the experience. It's about how can you translate for us what you know into what you can show us you would be able to do, right? So it's about really looking at the job advert or the job description, looking at what we're asking you to do. We want somebody to read and evaluate manuscripts. So in your resume, you should write to your ability. So if it's experience, it's your demonstrated experience. But if it's a lack of experience, you might say your ability. I have the ability to read and evaluate manuscripts for, or to be able to, or what have you, right? So it's just about how you're presenting those skill sets on your resume that are really going to stand out to us. For those of us who are getting a bit old to be interns, that's not true. We might not have publishing experience when applying. How would you recommend we pitch academic training? So great. I'm in the midst of interviewing maybe 30 of my own interns, because we're gearing up to hire editorial interns for the spring semester. And I have lots and lots of what we call non-traditional students. I was a non-traditional student. I didn't even go to undergrad until I was 21. I mean, that's not really that non-traditional, but I was a couple years behind. But you can still be an intern at 40, right? There's no age limit. I have interns. I just interviewed intern candidates with full families that are just coming back, or even changing careers, and that's totally fine. We totally understand that. How would you recommend that we pitch our academic training in a way? So yeah, it would be really about do the research. So if you're applying to an editorial internship, my recommendation is, and this might seem a little bit, I don't know the word, but take the time to do your due diligence, like Google or YouTube, what is an editorial assistant, right? Like get a sense of like what it is that these people do on a day-to-day. Take a look at that and layer your experiences or your whatever you've done in the past, and find a way to merge those two together. So it's just about really representing not your experiences, but highlighting your skill sets and how it applies to the role that you're applying for will go will help you immensely in the process. So I hope that was helpful. Let's see. How much of this is available to remote workers? Everything. Is there a department that focuses on readers who have impairment, specifically the sight impaired? Is it career accessible? So I think what we're asking is like accommodations, and is our company open to working with candidates who, is there, oh, no. Is there a department that focuses on readers who have impairments? I don't know. That's a great question. I'm gonna write that down. I don't know. I don't know that there's a direct exact department, but if we have literature that we would target to folks with impairments, maybe visually, do we print books in Braille? Like what, kind of content do we adapt for impaired readers? I'm sure we do, but I don't have the answer to that. But I know that we would have to. That's a great question. I'm gonna write that down. Really great question. You mentioned a lot of the editing and publishing around novels and books. Does it differ in any ways when it comes to publishing or editing complications of poetry? So interestingly enough, I don't know if you're familiar with Amanda Gorman, who did the poem for the inauguration. So we just recently did her first book, and I think we're getting ready. I don't know if that's public, but we're getting ready to publish another one of her books. No, the process doesn't differ. What we edit for may very well differ because of the type of language. So in a novel, you might use, or the nonfiction. In a certain novel, you might use a certain syntax, right? The way the grammar is written, and you'll edit for proper English, so to speak. Where if you're looking at a children's book, or you're looking at a book that might use colloquialisms or poetry, the process doesn't change, but what you edit for does. Which is why the editorial process is very collaborative. So when we send back things to authors, they're like, no, I meant that. It's supposed to look like that, right? And it's like, oh, okay, because it's kind of a collaborative process because we want to make sure that we maintain the author's voice, right? So if we go in and we change things to fit our understanding, but the audience that book's written for, they understand what that means. We have teams dedicated. So, okay, here's the way it works. So we have Ping and Random House. Then you have an imprint like Kokila, which is an imprint that's focused on diverse publications. Underneath that, you may have, they may publish a children's, like a kind of segment. They might do children's, mystery, nonfiction. And you have editorial assistants that will service all of the books that they do. But as you start to edit a mystery book, and you get a sense for like how that it's called like niches. Like sometimes editorial assistants will like really gravitate to a specific niche. They fall in love with nonfiction or children's or YA, like young adults, and there's no team dedicated to this specific type of content. But if you find yourself like, wow, I just really gravitate towards poetry, when those type of acquisitions come through the pipeline, then yes, you could very well like work with your team to like, I want to do those, because poetry is not as big of a genre as say romantic books. So there are imprints that's all they do is romantic books, or just mystery, or just illustrated books, right? Poetry is bit too much of a niche to have an entire team dedicated to it, but there are poetic books across the entire spectrum, right? So I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope it does. Okay, awesome. Sorry about that. I take it you like poetry, maybe? Okay. So something I would recommend for you is find maybe the 5 most popular books that I'm not familiar with all the poetic publications, but look and see like who published them, right? And if you find an imprint that seems to continuously publish poetic books, that's the place, that's the imprint. So it's not about paying a Random House, right? If you have a genuine interest, it's about finding that imprint. And that imprint might be owned by us, but that's where you want to work. You want to apply to that imprint. Do you have people working specifically for Latinx audience in every department? That's a great question. Yes and no. So as an industry, diversity, as a publishing industry, diversity has just been a struggle. Well, in corporate America in general, but specifically in publishing. Publishing has historically been a very homogenous workplace, right? Typically centered around the tri-state area, typically sourcing students who are aware or have access to the publishing process as a whole, or publishing specific certificate programs and et cetera. So there's a bit of privilege and a bit of awareness that's built into the historic workplace demographics. Something that we have recently done is hired a number of different, what we call, what is her title? I can't think of a title, but we are hiring, have hired and are continuing to hire what we would call kind of quality assurance people, specifically for African-American related content, Latinx related content, religious related, any content that could potentially be misrepresented or could potentially offend a particular demographic of society. So we're taking cultural sensitivity to a whole nother level as it relates to publishing our content. It does not go out without a lot of checks and balances from that particular community. So if we're gonna have people read the books in advance and like, how does this come across? Could this in any way be offensive? Does this accurately represent your culture and like how you would identify? Like these things are ongoing to make sure that we're being aware of that and making adjustments where needed. So are there specific people who only work on Latinx audiences? Yes. And we're continuing to grow, but there's also people who work specifically for to represent other different communities' interests as well. We actually have an imprint called Grupo Editorial that's based in Miami that specifically services the Latinx community and the content. It's an entire separate imprint. So whoever asked that question, Juliana? Yeah, Grupo, it's Grupo. And they have an office in Miami and also one in Mexico City. And I think some other Latin American countries as well, in South America. Awesome. These are great questions. Okay, how would you recommend someone with humanities and PhD market themselves and the degree when applying for a job in publishing? My recommendation, I'll go back, is to really maximize the use of a cover letter. Because we're in publishing, everybody asks for a cover letter. And I always ask my hiring managers, if I ask my candidates to submit, are you gonna read the cover letter? Because it takes time to write these. And like, we don't just want people writing cover letters just to have them write cover letters. And by and large, they do. And let me tell you what they look for. They're gonna look for, did this person really read the job advert, or did they just like copy and paste something on here and just like hope that it works? Does this person have an interest? If for a lack of exposure and experience in publishing, do they have, sorry, there's like a fly somewhere. Do they have a genuine interest in learning about the editorial process and why? And if you have a PhD, but of course, getting a PhD, well, bachelor's, master's, PhD, it all takes time away from being in the job market, so to speak. So I would use that space to speak to, as a for example, like as a PhD candidate or as a recent PhD, recipient of a PhD in X, I learned about X and feel as though because of what I know, I would be of value and an asset to your company because X, right? In the job advert, you ask for someone who can do this and do that. Based on what I've learned, X, right? Always kind of bring it back to either your curriculum, something you picked up in your curriculum, something you picked up in your practicum, something you learned about in your research or whatever it is. Also, PhDs and research, to the best of my knowledge, go hand in hand. You can't really get a PhD without having some sort of awareness of the research process, right? Core to, if you look at all of our job adverts, there's something about research in there because it's just inherent throughout even in the editorial jobs, it's inherent. All of our editorial assistants will do some sort of competitive title research to see how other books may do in a market, or when we're managing submissions windows, learning how to assess things quickly, being able to read something and synthesize information quickly. Those are all skill sets that I would like sit back and reflect on your PhD process, your content, your experiences, those relationships, conversations, and extract out things that you think would be of value and put that on your resume and your cover letter. And that would be the best way to position it. But what doesn't seem, I shouldn't say it. What is less advantageous is just listing that I have a PhD or that I have a master's. But help bring to light or to the top, like why that is of value to us and to the role more specifically. We'll be doing summer internships. Yes, I wish we knew right now the date, but we will have some. Hopefully, I'm having my fingers crossed to have our summer internships up by March, April of this year. So if there's an opportunity for me to come back and have a session on our internships, more than happy to do that. A lot of publishing jobs I've seen seem to pull from a pool of current employees, and the ones available to all applicants are highly competitive. How can you make yourself stand out? Probably I've seen pull from that's interesting. I've seen pull from a list of current. We hire a lot from within, but for entry-level jobs, we don't. So what happens is, like right now we have 82 jobs open or more, maybe 88 now at this point. There's a lot of jobs, open jobs that we're always hiring for. When we hire, say, an editorial assistant, design assistant, that person typically will move up in a year or two or what have you, kind of make their ways, continue their career trajectory. The way we backfill positions when they move up is to go into the market, right? And so that's not the only way to move up, but we do try to hang on to our talent and like hope that if you join us, like, that you do see a career path. So the jobs that you may see listed, I'm not sure if they're pulling from current employees, because if you're a current employee for us, you're typically already at an entry-level position, so we wouldn't like do lateral jobs that way. But a way to stand out, again, I just keep coming back to, it's just how you position your skill sets. We're a skill set focused company more than like what you've done. It's more about how do you feel your experiences and skill sets will be of benefit to the job you're applying for. Do we have staff in foreign countries? Absolutely. What is the interest in staff speaking other languages? That's a great question. And what could the path be for someone who comes from the sciences? Another great question. Okay, all right. First and foremost, yes, we have offices all over the world. Oftentimes, the most common language that we get is we need a need for Spanish, especially at Grupo, primarily Miami office. They need to be able to read and write Spanish. Outside of that, if you're in sales, so say you're a sales assistant for the Asian market, so it depends on the market you're working in, then that foreign language could be a benefit. In the sciences, now, if you are, this is again a great question. So across any discipline, science, well, probably more science, any of the different humanities, whether it's in history or what have you. The benefit to having that background is, again, when you go to proofread, if you go to revise, edit, market, design, and you understand the content, it gives you a much different perspective and lens to how you can, where you can pull from, right? So when you're thinking about like, oh, how do we market this science book for kids? Well, I actually have an understanding of what I'm reading and how it connects. So there's benefits to having content proficiency in a particular area. I think that I would, if you're interested in, and it just depends on what function of the business you're applying to, whether it's editorial, design, marketing, publicity, what have you. Less publicity, but more like marketing, absolutely. Editorial, sales would be another helpful thing. It would be about how you can leverage what it is you know about the sciences and to how you think that would be a benefit in the role, right? Or any respective discipline. There's a lot of great questions. I wish I had more time. Does Penguin Random House work with freelance copy editors? Yes, we hire a lot of freelance designers, a lot of freelance editors, a lot of freelance copy editors. We are in the process of launching some in-house copy editing apprenticeships, so to speak, to be able to kind of build our own pool of freelance people that we can hire in full time. But yes, what's the hiring process? I don't know for sure. I've never hired freelance. That's kind of like a different position, but I think like Upworks, I think is a website. There's other like kind of external websites where you can find like where there's asks for us. I think we hire through an agency, if I'm not mistaken. Can you provide some examples of entry-level positions in subsidiary rights? I'd have to get back to you on that because I don't hire for subsidiary rights yet. I do have the information, but I'd have to look it up. But I'm gonna leave my email anyway. So Mary, if you can shoot me that email, I can absolutely kind of send you a larger overview of like how subsidiary rights works, what, examples of potential jobs and et cetera. Do we have a specific department for ebooks? Production works differently, I guess. So I was wondering if department production sits. Ebooks is not handled by a different department. Production works with the physical production of the book. But anytime we put a book on Kindle, right? Kindle, Amazon, Kindle, or some sort of e-reader platform, it's our digital operations team that will take the actual file and adapt it to make sure that it can be uploaded onto these different sites. So it's really just our digital operations team that'll it's just a process, really more of like a click of the button. And we just kind of upload it up to whatever platform that we have. What are the different opportunities for advancement at Penguin and how quickly do folks move into new roles? Is there a lot of vertical movement, promotion, lateral movement? Yeah, both. So the great thing is we totally in support of moving around wherever you want to go. So if you started off with us as an editorial assistant, and through that, because you collaborate with marketing, you collaborate with different functions of the business, you're like, actually, I'm really more interested in marketing now. Like, I mean, editorial was cool, but I kind of find my nook over here. Great. Like, we're all for people moving around laterally, if it makes sense for them. Equally, if you're looking to move vertically, see, people typically make those moves within 2 years or less, I would say. I don't see people kind of staying in the same role. We just continue to grow. So we hire so much. So there's always opportunity for advancement. Yes, I would say no more than 2 years. I haven't seen anything longer than that, especially for entry-level roles. It's another good question. How is the process of hiring in-house translators? I don't have the answer to that. But again, if you can follow up with me, I can get you that information.
Or freelance translators too.
I'm sorry?
Either in-house or freelance translators.
That's a great question. I've never had that question before, but I'm sure. See, but I think, well, I'm not gonna take the time to process that loud. Anyway, I'll get that back to you. Let me try to get through maybe 1 or 2 more questions. I see most positions are located in New York. How possible is it for a single person to survive on that salary? I don't know how people do it. Does Random House provide support for new hires who would, can't see who would be open to relocating. So we don't offer relocation. And the starting salary for all of our positions, for assistant level positions, are all roughly around 45K. How hard is it to live in New York City on 45K single person? I couldn't do it, right? But if you're from, again, that's what kind of builds into this, what I was talking about publishing. Historically, most of the people who have worked in publishing are already in the tri-state area. And when I say tri-state, I'm, Jersey, New York, Connecticut. They have family they can live with, or they're living with four or five roommates, right, that they've had from college. They kind of, it's not a big shift. And for those people who have wanted to work for the #1 book publisher in the world and will just move from wherever and make it work, that's that opportunity cost. That's that grind that some people are on. It's not my grind. It's not my plight, right? But because of the pandemic, that's not really something that's actually a benefit. I think that you're able to kind of remain where it is that you are and what's financially feasible for you. And it's kind of, as your salary would allow you to maybe take that on, that's kind of a decision that you can make. I'll answer this last one, not because I don't want to, but just because the time, I think, is there. But are you assigned to your area of interest as an intern, entry-level employee? Is there opportunity to work in different genres? So our internship, that's a great question. We run spring, summer, fall, and it always covers a different function of the business. So right now we're doing editorial and design. Summer, I don't know what it'll be, let's say sales and marketing, and then something different in the fall. So you'll always be applying to the respective function of the business. When I say function, I mean like editorial, marketing, what have you. And then we take a lot of very meticulous notes. So when you share with us things like, oh, I'm very partial to mystery, or I really have a knack for diverse content, or whatever it is, we're going to make sure that we let our different imprints know, so that when it comes time for placement, you're going to be in a place that's really going to resonate with you and kind of suit your own individual learning outcomes and professional outcomes. So with that, I know there's a few more questions. I would I have time. I don't want to like hold everybody hostage to run over, but I really hope that this was in some way advantageous. It kind of gave you a little bit more of a window into like what we do. I could probably share another hour worth of information, but you know, for any of your, you know, if you're in the market right now and you're looking for opportunities, you know, our website for jobs, careers.penguinrandomhouse.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to contact me if you're looking for a position or want to let me know. In working with Johns Hopkins and working with Christine or Dr. Kelly, I forget I'm in academia. You know, feel free to shoot me a note and say, hey, you know, I applied, you know, or contact her and let her know when she can get in contact with me, and I can do whatever I can to kind of look that up. If you email me or message me, please reference this session, like put in the subject line, Hopkins, what have you. That's going to really help kind of get there. But Christine, let you take it from here.
Okay, wonderful. Well, Stefan, thank you so much for this session. I know I really am so confident that I speak to the group when I say how grateful I am for the really helpful, specific advice and strategies you gave around pursuing a career in publishing, and also really deepening and developing our knowledge of the space and industry and world in general. So thank you so much. And thank you everybody for joining today, for your huge engagement and the great questions that you've asked.